video games arrive very quietly, and they really live for quite a while and then just fade away. Others, however, become cult classic that people just keep talking about for many years. Well, the Scarface, The World's Yours game, we think, sort of falls firmly into that second category. The game was released in 2006. It was one of those rare movie adaptations that didn't just retell the film, it imagined an entire new story as well, where instead of following the tragic ending in the movie, the game sort of asked a pretty bold question, which was, what if Tony Montana survived? Well, that simple idea turned what could have been a typical licensed video game into something much more interesting. Players step back into Tony Montana's expansive shoes and rebuild his empire from the ground up, reclaiming Miami piece by piece after everything had been taken from him. It was pretty loud, of course, strategic, chaotic, stylish, and unapologetically over the top, just capturing the spirit of the film while giving players the freedom to create their own story. Now, of course, nearly 2 decades later, rumors have actually begun circulating that Scarface, The World Is Yours could be returning in the form of a modern remaster. And while nothing official has been confirmed yet, well, the idea has started gaining traction in gaming discussions and fan communities. I mean, considering the growing trend of reviving classic open world titles, the possibility doesn't seem far-fetched either. And if the project ever becomes a reality, it could really bring one of the most memorable crime games of the 2000s back into the spotlight. To understand why the idea of a remaster is so exciting here, is to help remember what made the original game stand out in the first place. At the time, open world crime games were heavily dominated by the Grand Theft Auto series, of course. Well, Scarface clearly borrowed elements from that formula, an open city, missions scattered across a large map, vehicles, weapons, and a criminal storyline. But it added its own identity through style, humor, and a pretty deep empire building system as well. Players didn't just complete missions, you got to rebuild Tony Montana's entire drug operation, which meant buying businesses, managing supply chains, negotiating deals with dealers, defending territory from rival gangs. Miami became a giant playground where every block represented a potential piece of your own empire. A modern remaster could really elevate that system almost dramatically. Like, imagine the same mechanics, but with improved user interfaces, deeper management options, more dynamic open world interactions. Instead of just static territories, the city could react more actively to your actions. Rival gangs might launch coordinated attacks. Police pressure could escalate depending on your activities. And economic systems that could just fluctuate based on supply and demand. The setting, of course, remains one of the game's biggest strengths. The World Is Yours was, Miami was vibrant, colorful, and also exaggerated in just the best possible way. With modern graphics technology, that version of Miami could almost look spectacular. High-resolution textures, improved lighting systems, more detailed environments could make the city feel alive in ways that the original hardware couldn't even begin to achieve. Another major improvements would likely come from the character animations and the facial details, because Tony Montana himself is one of the most iconic figures in the film history. The original game made an impressive effort to capture his personality. The character was voiced by a professional who delivered a surprisingly convincing performance that really captured Tony's aggressive charisma. A remaster could refine those performances through updated facial animations and motion capture. Tony's expression, his anger, his arrogance, and even his humor could feel more natural and cinematic. Dialogue scenes could feel closer to modern storytelling standards while still preserving the exaggerated personality that defined the character. The combat system is also another area that could benefit from modern upgrades. The original game had a pretty unique mechanic known as Balls Meter. As Tony intimidated enemies or dealt damage, the meter filled up, allowing players to activate a special mode where the time slowed down and Tony would bunkers. It was pretty theatrical, perfectly matching Tony Montana's personality. And in a remaster, that system could return with, some smoother animations, more cinematic camera angles, improved gunplay mechanics. And more to the point, maybe most importantly, the empire building aspect of the game could also be expanded into really subtle ways. In the original version, players had to purchase fronts of their drug operations, upgrade properties and defend their businesses from attacks. A modern remaster could really add new layers to that system. For example, properties might generate different types of revenue streams. Some businesses could act as laundering fronts, others as distribution hubs. Security upgrades could allow players to defend territory automatically, while certain locations might unlock new mission types for story events. These additions wouldn't necessarily change the core gameplay, but would make the experience feel more dramatic and engaging, and strategic. And of course, the story itself remains one of the biggest reasons people remember the game. By rewriting the ending of the Scarface film, the developers created a what-if scenario where Tony Montana survived the infamous mansion shootout and set out to reclaim everything he lost. It was a clever narrative twist that allowed players to experience the world of Scarface from a completely new angle. A remaster would likely preserve that story while presenting it with improved cutscenes and pacing. Dialogue sequences could be reworked with cinematic camera angles, better character models, and smoother transitions between gunplay and the narrative moments. In recent years, actually, gaming has seen a strong wave of remasters and remakes. Scarface: The World's Yours fits perfectly into that trend. It's old enough to feel nostalgic, but also modern enough that its core design still holds up, unlike some older games that feel dated in their mechanics. And obviously, a remaster could finally give the game the visual polish and technical stability it really deserves. Higher frame rates, smoother controls, faster loading times, modern display support that could make the experience feel fresh again, without altering the core gameplay. But if the rumors ever become reality, the potential, we know, is enormous. Scarface: The World's Yours weren't just another open-world crime game, it was a wild, stylish power fantasy built around one of cinema's most iconic characters. It allowed players to step into Tony Montana's world and rewrite his fate. And that idea still feels exciting today. If a remastered version eventually arrives, it could introduce a whole new generation of players to the empire building experience that made the original game so memorable. At the same time, longtime fans would finally have the chance to return to Miami and rebuild Tony's empire once again. Because in the world of Scarface, one rule always applies: the world is yours if you're ruthless enough to take it.